Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we're going to talk about Gothic fiction. In our previous session, like back, and we talked about all romantic revival, including graveyard poets, then Blake and Burns. And remember, from them, you definitely going to get one or two questions about the previous session. About today will focus on Gothic fiction, which is equally important topic in your exams perspective. They ask question based on that, but for the past 5 to 7 years they're asking one question from Mary Shelley, and of course one or two question you might get actually from Walpole, and especially the castle of Otranto. But remember, they for the past 6 to 7 years, they're not asking a lot of question on Gothic fiction, but sometime they might appear, and especially the name of the work. You don't have to go deep and know the plot, but important you should know the main character. Other, you can just remember the name, and that will be enough for you. So let's move forward. If anyone is there, you can just say hi in the chat box quickly, and then we'll start immediately. Right. Okay, so let's begin. So first of all, you should know what Gothic means. So when this word come, you should know it is about horror, right? Terror, old castle, old castle, and the setting is very dark, right? And usually ghostly story, and there should be some evil or monster. So these are the keyword to remember what is Gothic. Also, Dracula also comes into the Gothic category, and remember that Dracula and all the vampire story comes in our Victorian period. That will talk about all the Dracula genre there, the vampire genre that we'll talk about. But remember, this also comes in your Gothic fiction, and along with that we have some romantic poet also, like Lord Byron. Very important, he started that vampire story of fragment of novel. So as I told you, what is Gothic, remember all these words: horror, terror, old castle, dark, right? Ghostly story, evil, monster, all these stuff are there. So anyway, let me tell you, it's all about that haunting, fear, and these Gothic architecture, especially setting in the Middle Ages sometime. And first one, Castle of Otranto, very important, you should know. And one of the important thing is that it has subtitle, and it was added later, not in its first publication, but in next publication, and which was they have added, and the subtitle was the Gothic, the word itself, right? Other contributor we have like Clara Reeves and Radcliffe. And Gothic themes, as you know, we have horror, terror, old castle, all this stuff, right? And authors we have like Mary Shelley and Walter Scott also there, and we are covering Walter Scott in this session as well. And the Victorian period saw Gothic novels by Dickens also, and the Brontes. So these are all in the Gothic fiction, but here we are talking about the early Gothic, and then we'll move to the Victorian later when we talk about Victorian period, and we'll talk Dickens and the Brontes. And also in American fiction also we have like Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne also use this Gothic element that will also talk about when we reach to their section. Anyway, as I told you, fragment of novel, vampire story by Lord Byron, Dracula by Bram Stoker. And remember, these are all from this Dracula, and other is from either from romantic or Victorian. So the story also known as the Fragment. I'm talking about the Fragment as a novel, and the Burial a fragment. So these both are the same name, and it has this same feature as vampire theme. So Richard Maas, another is The Beetle, was another notable Gothic work. We have A Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Remember, very great work, in fact, by Stevenson. And then 20th century Gothic authors, we have other like Stephen King and Defanto Maurier. Guys, Shirley Jackson is also there, Anne Rice, Toni Morrison. All these are there in the Gothic fiction. But remember, they belong to the later period. But here we are just talking about the early period of the Gothic fiction. And remember, this code, as you can see your screen, if you remember only this much, then it will be enough for you to get 1 marks, right? And it will definitely come in your exam, either from Frankenstein or Castle of Otranto, or these names. That's all you have to remember. So let's focus on the code here. And if you want to take a screenshot, you can easily take a screenshot of this, and you can remember later. So anyway, let me tell you about the code. So remember, pole on wall of castle. So remember, Walpole, remember these represent this, and the castle of Otranto. There lives, and who lives there in the castle? Shallow Frank with Old English Baron. So shallow, I'm talking about Shelley, Frank with Old English Baron, right? And this is Clara, that old. So very important that you should remember these codes. And the second code to remember: I turned the old manor. Okay, that Turner written the old manor house and into, I turned the old manor house into Beckford Wathick. So Beckford is the author and the Wathick is the novel. So these two codes can give you the idea of what I'm talking about, right? Number 3, as you over your screen you can see, Lewis the monk. Okay, so Lewis is the monk, which means Lewis has written the monk, and this guy stands on the cliff of Udolpho. So cliff is our Radcliffe, and the mystery of Udolpho is the Udolpho here, right? So that's very important. Then Caleb wins gold. So remember that William Godwin wrote Caleb Williams, and it has the title, which is Things as They Are. Very important, they ask a question on that itself. Then Mature Melmoth. So our Maturin here, as you can see, Charles Robert Maturin wrote what? Melmoth the Wanderer. So I hope you remember all the code, and that is enough for your exam, right? And to be the safer side of it, we're going to talk about the plot also, and we'll begin with the pioneer himself. And who is that? None other than Horace Walpole. And very important, he was kind of son of the Prime Minister Robert Walpole, and who is sometimes represented as corrupt prime minister. But anyway, I'm not saying it, I have somewhere. So Walpole, very important, as you know, English writer and collector. Remember, he remembered for the castle of Otranto, and he started that, what, you know the Gothic genre in English literature. As you know, he was the youngest son of Prime Minister Robert Walpole, and he was not only the writer, but also he had a lot of thing doing in his education. Like he was educated in the King's College, Cambridge, and he toured France, and France with who, none other than our Thomas Gray, which we have discussed in our previous session, and we have also solved a lot of questions based on Thomas Gray as well. And remember, these both are important. Sometime they will be asked in indirect question, like the question in the Thomas Gray, like who has written the legend, the not country churchyard, but for the cats, the favorite cats, and that favorite cat is for of whom, Horace Walpole. So very important. And Walpole admires great poetry. And after returning 1741, he entered into the parliament. Parliament as because his father was a prime minister, so he had definitely an opportunity to get into the political career as well. And he inherited what, the peerage from his nephew, and he remained unmarried, and his earldom became extinct upon earth. So anyway, upon death. Anyway, the Castle of Otranto, what restored romance to contemporary fiction. Remember, he wrote The Mystery of Mother also, which was a tragedy on incestual theme, and authored also Historic Doubts on the Life of Richard III, 1768, and wrote on art, and history, and like anecdote of painting in England. Anyway, you're not gonna get question on that, but you're going to get question from the Castle of Otranto, and one indirect question they might ask from Thomas Gray about Horace Walpole. So that's what you have to know. Remember, now let's move to the Castle of Otranto. Very important, the date, because it definitely comes in order among other Gothic work. So this is very important that you should know. Anyway, it was first published in 1764, but later it was published in 1765 with the Gothic subtitle. That's what I wanted to tell you, because that's a very important thing, because they might ask question. As you know, it has all the medieval settings, all the haunted castle terror, all these things. And as you know, these are the important theme of Gothic fiction, right? And Walpole is inspired by a nightmare and robbery, and that was the source of writing the Castle of Otranto. And remember, it tells the story of, as you know, other Gothic already discussed in our code, but here as you can see also Radcliffe, Shelley and Poe. But remember, the Castle of Otranto, an important plot is that this character you should know, that sometime in exam they ask, and Manfred is the character here, and Manfred's son Conrad, and how he died is being crushed by a giant helmet. Question was there from itself. There was a plot, and they asked who has written this particular plot, and what is identify the name of the novel or the author. So that's what was the question. So anyway, remember, Manfred and his son died from by crushed by a giant helmet. And what happens after that? He has no hair, right? And he wanted a hair, but his wife actually what was not able to provide hair, so he plans to marry Isabella. So that's the whole plot, beginning of the plot. But what Isabella kind of escapes with the help, and who was a pest. And when Manfred found out about it, what he said, he ordered Theodore's death. But another Jeremy recognized Theodore as his son. So he was not, Theodore was not only peasant, but he was from the you know uh, wealthy country and very respected family, who is a Jerome, and he identified, and he begs for his life. But nights arrive, revealing Frederick's claim to the castle, and Manfred and the knight race to find Isabella, but they were not you know able to find her. Then Theodore, what happened? Our Theodore, right, is free its daughter Matilda, and Theodore finds Isabella, hides her in a cave. And what happened when Manfred found out that his that Theodore escaped? He goes and tries to kill Isabella, but mistakenly, what he killed, his own daughter Matilda for Isabella by stabbing, right? And what happened at the end? Theodore is revealed as the true prince of Otranto, and eventually Matilda dies, leaving Manfred to repent for his action. So that's the whole thing is about, and the novel ends with what Theodore as the rightful heir. So remember, important character. There was a one question of that Manfred mistakenly killed Matilda. Identify the novel or his daughter. So that kind of question. I'm talking about very old questions, but these days they are not asking that deep questions. But for your in a safer side, the whole plot. As I told you, there was a castle and it was owned by Manfred, and he had a son who died, you know, who died by what? That helmet, right? And what happened? Eventually, Manfred wanted a heir, but his wife was not able to produce. Then he planned to marry Isabella, right? Isabella escapes with Theodore, and that Theodore eventually is the prince of Castle of Otranto, and that Manfred tried to kill Isabella but mistakenly killed his daughter Matilda. So that's the whole plot is about. I hope you get the whole plot. Right. Next is our Mary Shelley. And Mary Shelley, as you know, is the daughter of William Godwin, that the one who wrote, right, Caleb Williams, and Mary Wollstonecraft. Very important, these vindication of rights to women, right? Remember that work also. And Shelley, what? As you know, her main work is Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. And you might be wondering why Shelley is the surname, because she eloped with P.B. Shelley and married. So that's the whole thing happened in her life, and that's only thing you have to remember based on her life. So anyway, very important work, Frankenstein, and it was inspired by ghost writing. And what happened actually, Shelley, right, Mary Shelley, then we have PB Shelley and Lord Byron. They went for a walk and they decided that we should write most horror kind of novel, and it was a competition who writes the kind of uh, most disturbing and most horror kind of haunted stories. So eventually our Mary Shelley won, but remember other have also written in the same way, but like Fragment by Byron, but it was not very famous. But Frankenstein eventually kind of steal the show. And what happened, we are now studying her, right, and especially her work. And what other thing you should know is that she has written Frankenstein, Faulkner, History of 6 Weeks Tour, Lador, The Fortuner, Perkin Warlock, The Journal of Mary Shelley. But what you have to remember, the last man, they recently asked this question. So that's very important that you should know the name of this work. So let's talk about Frankenstein. As I told you, she stayed with Byron. There was a couple of more guys like Polidori and Claire Mormon, and they have suggested that they should write a ghost story, and that competition was who, like write the most, as I told you, haunted kind of a story, very horrific, very kind of. So that was they have started, and Mary wrote Frankenstein. Very important. 16. And Victor Frankenstein, as you know, it was the story of Frankenstein, and that monster leads to tragic consequence. He does the practical and he creates what? A Frankenstein, a kind of uh, you know a monster through all these, from different parts of the animals. And he threw, put electric in it, and he suddenly comes alive. But he was not happy, in this world, because people start despising him, and the only there. And he was also, attracted with a woman, but through his figure and all, he was not able to, persuade the love. But what happens, through that disguise, he started hating, he started killing his own maker, and he wanted to punish him through the avenger. How kind of, what kind of person you have made me, physically, and the appearance and all this stuff. And what he does, eventually kills all the close person from, Victor's. That's what happened, the whole story is about. Right, now let me tell you the summary, because anyway you're going to get one question, and as you know, it will be maybe on the chronology order, or they might ask just simple plot and the characters, and which genre it is, and the name of the, writer who has written this particular work. That's all in the, these days they are asking in the question. But let me tell you the summary of the novel, very important. Remember, what it starts, or beginning is from the letters. So that Robert Walton writes a letter to his sister about his expedition, and Walton's ship becomes trapped near the north. This is the setting. If you have watched the movie on Frankenstein, it will be easy for you to remember. But anyway, most of you already know the plot and already know, things. But here, when we just talk about all the, these events and all the plots, then you will be able to, kind of recall what you have watched and what you have read, right? So, what Walton rescues Victor Frankenstein weekend from traveling, and Victor recounts his life in Geneva University of Studies in the beginning. All these are happening in setting up your mood, and Victor discovered the secret of life in that, when he was doing all the research about natural philosophy. Very important. He found that he can create a life. So what he does with that gift, Victor creates a monster from body parts in his apartment, from the animal, from the other, humans and all. And horrified by his creation, Victor falls ill and is nursed by Henry. Victor receives news of brother William's murder, and remember that murder was not an kind of, an accident, but it was by who? None other than the monster himself. He sees the monster and believes it killed Williams, and that eventually was true. And Justin Morris is accused and executed for the crime. Victor feels guilty for the death of his loved ones. Victor meets the monster, and that is the very important scene, and where it was on a glacier seeking understanding. Then monster confesses that he murdered Williams out of revenge. The monster asks Victor to create a female companion for him, but Victor agreed. But again, he didn't start any work, and he was not making any monster. Right, but it was just the words. And Victor destroyed the female monster, fearing the consequences. So that Victor, while he was creating, like, there will be two monster, and everything will be a kind of chaos. So he decided to kill, destroy this other female monster. But when that monster found out that he's not creating, he has destroyed, then he started again to monster. So as revenge, and was to be Victor's wedding, right? And Victor dumps the remains of the creature into a lake. Victor is arrested for murder and shown Henry's dead body. Then Victor falls ill and is imprisoned until recovery. After it, returning from Geneva, Victor marries Elizabeth. And what happened? He thinks that fears the monster warning and sends Elizabeth away. But Elizabeth is killed by the monster on their wedding night. That's very kind of disturbing, right? And Victor's grief uh, soon after Elizabeth's death. And Victor vows a revenge and chases the monster to Arctic. And the two engage in a kind of, dog sled chase, but the ice breaks. Walton finds Victor and nurses him as he tells his story. So that's the whole plot, and that's everything happened in the novel. So I hope you remember the plot right now, and it will be easy for you to remember. As I told you, we have all the code that you have taken a screenshot. If you're not, just go into the beginning of the session and take a screenshot, because you're going to get question from that itself. Anyway, let me tell you about the Clara Reeve. And as you know, Clara Reeve, they both, this is also a Gothic novelist, and she's very famous for the Old English Byron. Remember, we have Pole on the wall, right, of Otranto. There lives a monster in a the English Baron Reeve. All these quotes are there that you can remember, right? So Clara Reeves, very important. The Old English Baron. You remember 1764. Our what Castle of Trento, and then 1770. Uh, something is, let me tell you, 1818. So you can put 1878 this English Baron, and 1818 is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So remember all in order. It's very important because you're definitely going to get question on chronological order, right? Okay, so let's come back and talk about the Old English Baron. But before that, we should know that that author, that novelist belongs to the Gothic novel genre, and she's famous for the and that will be uh, you know answer, because if you know the work, and that's where you're going to get questions. Anyway, some of uh, you know other work is wrote an innovative history of prose, the progress of romance. Some other work is also there, but definitely you're not going to get question from that, but you're going to get question from the Old English Baron. So only you have to remember the date and the name. And as you know, it's from the Gothic fiction, so the themes will be the same, symbol will be in a kind of the same. Right, and now let me tell you about the Old English Baron. So, as you know, by Clara Reeve, remember 1778, and there is a Mrs. Bridgen, Samuel Richardson's daughter, edited the novel. Okay, and the story is about Sir Philip Harclay's return from medieval England, and he finds his friend Arthur Lord Love dead. And what happens? He kind of, joins the family, but he refuses. But anyway, you only have to remember this name. That's all would be enough. Let's not move to the deep, because anyway, knowing the plot will take a time to remember, but do not confuse yourself with the code. Only code will be enough to get you one question. Anyway, Turner Smith, the old manor house. Very important. Like, I turned the old manor house into Bedford Gothic. Remember that code, right? So that's what you have to know. Only the code. And she has written English manor house. And Anne Radcliffe, we have, right, who's standing on the cliff of Udolpho. Very important, right? Standing in the cliff of Udolpho. So that's the code, and that's what we have to know. And also remember the date, because we have only four to five option, right? A, B, C, D, and sometime E. And from that they are going to ask in chronology order. So definitely Castle of Otranto will be there in the option. Then there will be about this Udolpho, and then there will be Monk, and then there will be our Frankenstein, definitely, and they might add one more, and which will be about this. Wait a minute. Monk is done. Beckford Gothic. So these you have to arrange in order. right? So that kind of question you will get. Okay, let me tell you about the Radcliffe. Radcliffe standing on the mountain of Udolpho. So easy to remember with the name and the associated work. Right. Again, Gothic fiction, supernatural elements, same thing, already happening. Right. And what else you can remember here is that she has written the Italian uh, Romance of the Forest, very important, and Journey Made into the. But anyway, very important is this statement because you always get question from Jane Austen. Remember, Jane Austen's work, Northanger Abbey, what is a parody of the mystery of Udolpho. And the Italian was written in response to Lewis Monk. So these are important things that you have to know. So the mystery of Udolpho. So the mystery of Udolpho published in 1794. So remember the date. Our first is Cashel, 1764, right? Then we have our 1778 is uh, this particular work. Let me tell you the table here. Not this one. The Old English Baron. Then we have the Old English House. Remember. Then we have before that actually we have after that Udolpho. Remember, all these things are in the code. You don't have to go anywhere. So the code, one more time, you can just take a screenshot or just have a look, and everything is in the order. Right. Pole on wall of castle. There lives shallow Shelley Frankenstein with Old English baron. And I turn the old manor house into Beckford Gothic. And Levis the monk stands on the cliff of Udolpho. Caleb wins gold. Uh, of course, Godwin, Caleb Williams, and Mature Melmoth. Very important. And then your one, maybe two questions are done, right? Now let's go back. Okay, the mystery of Udolpho. As I told you, a couple of things you should know about that is Jane Austen's very important work. They ask a question on it. Definitely, it will be somewhere. It's important thing. Anyway, the mystery of Udolpho, as you know, published 1794. Remember in 4 volumes, and it is the story of Emily Saint Aubert. And Emily faces misadventure, including the death of her parents. So that's the whole plot is about. And as you know, same theme, and the elements are like supernatural, natural, gloomy castle, right? Haunted, and all these dark things will be definitely. Emily is the archetypal Gothic heroine, right? That typical heroine from facing terror and situation. And Jane Austen, as you know, parodied Rudolph in her novel Northanger Abbey. Right, so that's all you have to remember there. Matthew Lewis Monk, as you know, as I told you, right, about the code also. So the monk by Lewis, remember the date 1796. So everything is coming in order, right? So English Gothic horror novelist. Monk himself, it is called sometime, nicknamed after his novel The Monk. That's all you have to remember there. And the character, if you would want to know, is by Umbrazio. And William Thomas Beckford. As I told you, I turned what the house into Beckford Gothic. Remember the code. So William Thomas Beckford. Remember the work 86. So it will come before our code, right? Bed the other. So anyway, Just look at the code and you will know. So Gothic is by Beckford, that you have to remember. The same thing is already there, like it has the same elements and themes and all. And Byron and Mallarmé acknowledge his genius as a writer. And Beckford is also known for building Fonthill Abbey. Right, he also wrote some travel accounts, parodied of Gothic novels. He also wrote journal Life at Fonthill. Gothic subtitle is very important because they ask question an Arabian tale. So the castle of Otranto's subtitle is the Gothic, right? Frankenstein and this Gothic. These all subtitle you have to remember. Anyway, William Gode and another work, Caleb Williams, you can add in the chat. These are the type of question you get, and as you know, as things they are our subtitle, right? Remember, things as they are, or the adventure of Caleb Williams. And Maria or the Wrongs of Women, very important, is Mary Wollstonecraft unfinished work. Anyway, we'll talk about her when we talk about romantic period, right? And again, William Godwin, remember Caleb Williams, this work again the same. He was a social philosopher, religious dissenter, and he anticipated the romantic movement with ideas and person. Not only that he is famous, but his work is political justice. You always get question on that, right? So when everything is done, we are left with couple of one more author, Maturin. We have talked about Mature, Melmoth. So that will be enough. And the Wanderer, 1820. Remember the date. 1818 is our Frankenstein, and 1820 is Melmoth the Wanderer. Right. Now, let me tell you about some of the questions that they have asked in your exam from the Gothic fiction from the past 5 to 6 years, maybe 7 in fact. Subtitle, as I told you, Castle of Otranto, the Gothic, easy, we just discussed. Frankenstein, Modern Prometheus. Tess of the D'Urbervilles is A Pure Woman. And Vanity Fair, a novel without hero. Easy to answer, right? Doesn't take much time. In essay, Three Women's Text and a Critique Imperialism is by Gayatri Spark. And why we have mentioned, because in this particular work they have mentioned, she has mentioned Frankenstein's by our Mary Shelley, and also mentioned White Sargasso and Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, right? Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So that's why it's important. Who is the author of the pandemic fiction, The Last Man? As I told you, Mary Shelley. Yesterday. That is, I have asked on her. So arrange the following text chronologically. So this is Frankenstein, as you know the date, 1818, and definitely it is 1920 somewhere, right? You can just, take the not exact date, sometime the close thing is very important, like 1920s, 1930s, right? So in fact, because they ask sometime 100 uh, gap, 100 years, 50 years, 30 years, so that kind of gaps are there, so it'll easy for you to remember. As I told you, Maria by Mary Wollstonecraft, very important. It was before our Frankenstein is what, 17, somewhere around 90s, right? 98. And the female eunuch, of course it is from our 1950s time. And the Return of the Soldier by Rebecca Waste, sound like very so the first one is of course this, then we have Frankenstein, Then we have E, The Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West. It is in 1918. And Room of One Song, as I told you, after 20s. I see 29. Easy to answer. So that's how you can answer. So the our order is this: C. The first one is that, so we can make C. Then our second work is what? Frankenstein. A. Then the Return of the Soldier is by Rebecca West, which is E. And then D. The Female Eunuch. 50s, as I told you, very late. Where is it? Very late, yeah, 1970. So that is our the last one. uh, 18, right? Well, let me check one more time. 1970s. So here the code, something in the answer is not sound good. C is Maria, correct. A is correct. Then we have E, Return of the West. The Female Eunuch should be at the end. D. So our answer would be somewhere not actually falling into the category here. Anyway, you should take a screenshot and see. Again, wrong of woman, as you see here. Something is there in the explanation. Let me see. CAE 1918 and the female eunuch 70. So female eunuch should be at the end. D should be at the end. So that B thing should be here. C, A, E and B. This should be the order actually. And at the end we have the female eunuch D. So C, A, E, B, D. C, A, E, B, D. So some confusion is there. You can add one more option. C, A, E, P, D. So that kind of question you get extra marks, right? Anyway, question number 15, easy to answer. William Godwin, as you know, we have talked about it. And David Hume, very famous work. Nobody can forget, right? And then we have Gibbon, line in the Roman Empire. Anyway, we're going to talk about when we talk about our romantic period. And A Complete History of Man is by very not very important work that you can remember, but here they have asked question on that. And at the end we have William Godwin, who was in political justice we just discussed, right? Another about Walter Scott. So Walter Scott, like way back, like 10 to 15 years ago, they were asking a lot of questions from Walter Scott. But it has completely changed for the past 7 to 8, even 10 years. We didn't see any, many questions on. So we're just gonna keep it, because what if they'll ask only the work and Beverly novel, and who are there, what all our novels are there in our Waverly novel. So it's very important that you should know that what is Waverly. And remember, the name comes from the first work, Waverly, and his poems are The Lady of the Lake and the Marmion. So these are important. Remember, as we talked about Burns, right? He was hailed as the national poet, and especially who from where? Scotland. So it is the same for him too. He was also a kind of national poet. He was mostly talking about, it can be seen, the patriotism can be seen in Walter Scott's work. And mostly it was about history, and mostly Scottish history, are there. So that's why it is very important. And remember, Waverley is given to the long series of Scott novels released from 1814 to 1832. So the Walter Scott, if they ask on question, on Walter Scott, he will be on the chronological order. Not his work, sometime his work, but remember his name will be there. So remember 1771, 1832. So that kind of question. And remember starting with Waverley, and it has starting with 1, this is 2, this is 3. So 3 we have Guy Mannering, the Antiquary. The other is Rob Roy, the Heart of Midlothian, Ivanhoe, and Kenny-Vaughan. And some of yours syllabus, when you were doing your masters or bachelors, these were there, these works, some of them. So these are very important. So that's all you have to remember. And some of the poem, minstrelsy of the Scottish border, the lay of the last minstrel, ballad and lyrical pieces, marmorium, tale of flood and field, the lady of the lake. They have asked question on that, the field of Waterloo. So remember, from the poetry they might ask, they used to ask a lot of questions, but the chant has changed, right? So these are the work. You can easily get the notes and read it in detail if you want, but as I told you, these are the question you will get, none other than that. But anyway, to be in a safer side, as I always tell, you can read it. So one question was there, of the following is not the positive evils of Scott as a novelist: his great haste in composition of his story, his haphazard finish. Remember, not included. So he had sensitive ear, rhythm, and melody. Okay, that's all there, guys, and we have finished our romantic revival. Romantic revival is done. I hope you liked the session, and what you have to do, just like the video and leave a comment if you want to know more. And tomorrow we're gonna talk about romantic period, guys, so be there, because that's gonna be a good session, because as you know, we get a lot of question from Wordsworth, we get a lot of question from Shelley, we get a lot of question from Keats and St. Coleridge. Always we get question from Coleridge, but these two will cover their critical part in the critical session when we talk about romantic criticism and these things. We'll also talk about Byron, we'll talk about periodicals in the romantic period, right? And we'll also talk about those school like lake poets, right? Cockney, and these things we're gonna talk about all of them one by one. So be there tomorrow for the romantic period. So bye bye, take care, and have a good